"You can't speak to me like that. Do you know who my father is?" Those 9 words, spoken by Victoria Ashford, 23 years old, standing in Providence Municipal Court over an $85 parking ticket. An $85 ticket for a Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon worth $180,000. Victoria Ashford, heiress to a $4.2 billion real estate empire, thought this would go like every other time, thought one phone call would make it disappear. But Judge Caprio doesn't take phone calls. Because what started as a routine traffic court appearance was about to expose something much darker, a pattern of entitlement that had been enabled for years, a system that had been looking the other way while privilege purchased immunity. And Judge Caprio was about to strip away every layer of protection money could buy. But here's what Victoria didn't know. This wasn't about an $85 ticket. It was about 73 unpaid violations. 11 cities, 3 years, and a system that had been saying yes to her while working families paid every fine, every penalty, without question. Because privilege doesn't just bend rules, it breaks accountability for everyone else. And when no one says no to someone for their entire life, the courtroom becomes the first place they hear it. And that $85 ticket would expose how wealth had been purchasing immunity while a 67-year-old cancer patient missed her radiation appointment because someone needed coffee. If you're watching from anywhere you've ever paid a ticket you couldn't afford, worked overtime to cover a violation, or watched someone else play by different rules, then you need to hear this story. Subscribe to Judgment Stories because sometimes justice looks like a judge who refuses to recognize VIP treatment in a courtroom designed for equals. And I'm warning you now, this one gets uncomfortable. Because entitlement doesn't surrender quietly. Tuesday, 2:15 p.m., Providence Municipal Court. Case number 47 TC 2194. Violation. Parking in handicapped zone without permit. Defendant. Victoria Ashford. She walked into that courtroom with a designer handbag on the table. Sunglasses still on her head. Manicured nails scrolling through her phone. She hadn't looked up when the bailiff called her name. Hadn't looked up when Judge Caprio entered. Just kept scrolling, like she had somewhere better to be. Judge Caprio spoke first, his voice calm, procedural, the way it always is. "Miss Ashford, you were cited on April 14th for parking in a handicapped space without a permit at Rhode Island Hospital. Do you understand the charge?" Victoria sighed. Actually sighed. "It was 5 minutes. I was picking up a coffee. This is ridiculous." 5 minutes. For coffee. At a hospital. Her attorney sat beside her in a $3,000 suit, already pulling out his business card to approach the bench. Officer Rodriguez stood near the witness box, jaw tight, hands behind his back. He'd been the one to write the citation. He'd been the one to hear what she said next. Judge Caprio read from the citation. Parked in clearly marked handicapped space. Blue curb. Signage visible. No permit displayed. 11:40 a.m. The attorney started talking. "Your Honor, Miss Ashford wasn't aware—" Victoria interrupted him. "I was running late. There were no other spots." Judge Caprio looked at Officer Rodriguez. "Officer Rodriguez, how many open spaces were in that lot?" 17, Your Honor. I counted them in my report. 17 open spaces. She'd said there were none. And that's when Judge Caprio did what he always does when something doesn't add up. He started digging. He flipped through the file on his desk, slowly, page by page. Then he stopped. There's a notation here. Multiple unpaid citations. Multiple jurisdictions. He looked up at the bailiff. "Bailiff, please pull records for Victoria Ashford across all Rhode Island municipal systems and check Connecticut, Massachusetts." The courtroom went quiet. You could hear whispers in the gallery. Someone in the back said, "Finally." The attorney tried to object. Judge Caprio raised his hand. "I'll wait." And so they waited. 5 minutes became 10. 10 became 15. Victoria stopped scrolling. Her attorney whispered something to her. She shook her head. And then the bailiff returned with a stack of papers 3 inches thick. Judge Caprio started reading. Out loud. Every single one. Newport, 11 parking violations. Total, $935. Unpaid. He turned the page. Boston. 8 violations. $720. Unpaid. Another page. Greenwich, Connecticut. 14 violations. Fire lane, handicapped zones, no parking zones. $1,540. Unpaid. He kept going. Citation after citation, city after city, and then he started reading dates. January 14th, 2022. First citation. Handicapped zone, Boston. March 3rd, 2022. Fire lane citation dismissed after intervention. June through December 2022. 31 citations, 0 paid. 31 citations in 6 months, 0 paid. And then Judge Caprio said the thing that made everyone in that courtroom understand what this was really about. While working parents paid every ticket within 30 days to avoid late fees, Ms. Ashford accumulated 73 violations without a single consequence. 73 violations. 3 years. 11 cities. And not one single consequence. But Judge Caprio wasn't done, because documents only tell part of the story. He wanted to see what happened. "Let's see the interaction," he said. The bailiff queued up the body cam footage. Officer Rodriguez's camera. April 14th, 11:42 a.m. The video played on the courtroom screen. You could see Victoria standing next to her G-Wagon, Officer Rodriguez approaching, explaining the violation. And then you heard her voice. "Do you know who I am? My father owns half this city. You're writing yourself out of a job." The courtroom went silent, completely silent, and Victoria tried to explain it away. "I was upset. I didn't mean—" Judge Caprio cut her off. "You said his name. Officer? Did you recognize the name?" Officer Rodriguez nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. That's why I made sure to document everything." But Judge Caprio still wasn't done, because threats are one thing, pattern is another, and he needed to know if this was isolated or systemic. He picked up his phone, put it on speaker, dialed Newport Traffic Court. "This is Judge Caprio. Can you tell me what happened with case number 89A771? The clerk's voice came through the speaker. "Dismissed, Your Honor." Attorney called, cited urgent business travel. Then someone from the mayor's office called. "We were told to close it." "Told to close it," Judge Caprio repeated. "By whom?" "I don't have a name, Your Honor. Just a note that says mayoral office intervention." Judge Caprio thanked her and hung up. Then he looked at Victoria. "Mayoral office intervention for a parking ticket." And then someone in the gallery spoke, a woman's voice, shaking but determined. "She parked in my daughter's spot. Cerebral palsy. We waited 40 minutes. Judge Caprio looked at the bailiff. The papers he'd brought back weren't just citations. They were complaints, letters, reports that had been filed and ignored. The bailiff laid them out. 73 citations, 42 in handicap zones, 19 in fire lanes, 12 in no parking zones at hospitals and schools. Total fines, $6,385. Amount paid, 0. Judge Caprio read the numbers out loud. Let them sit in the air. That's 2 violations per month, for 3 years, at locations where people rely on those spaces to survive. And then he picked up one more piece of paper. A letter, handwritten, from Mrs. Chen. Mrs. Chen is 67 years old, stage 4 cancer patient at Rhode Island Hospital. She wrote this letter 3 days ago. He started reading. April 14th was my radiation appointment. I circled the lot for 15 minutes because someone in a $180,000 SUV was in the only handicapped spot near the entrance. I missed my window. They rescheduled me for 3 days later. Judge Caprio paused, looked up at Victoria, then kept reading. 3 days mattered. The tumor grew. I'm stage 4 now. 3 days. A tumor grew because someone needed coffee. Victoria looked down at the table, whispered something to her attorney, shook her head, and Judge Caprio put the letter down. Did you see the blue curb? He asked. Yes. Did you see the sign? Yes, but That's a yes. Did you have a permit? No. Judge Caprio leaned forward. So you saw a spot reserved for people who needed it, and you decided your coffee was more important than their access to medical care. Victoria didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because what do you say to that? You saw Mrs. Chen's spot. Judge Caprio continued. You didn't know it was hers, but you saw what it represented, and you took it anyway, because in your world, rules are suggestions. And then, Judge Caprio did something he's famous for. He went silent. 8 seconds. 10. 14. No one moved. The attorney's pen hovered over his notepad. Victoria stared at the table. Officer Rodriguez hadn't blinked. The courtroom clock ticked. Someone in the gallery shifted in their seat. And then Judge Caprio spoke. Accountability gets quiet so truth can be heard. And the truth is, this courtroom might be the first place you've been told no in your entire life. He folded his hands on the bench. Here's my finding. Miss Ashford, you are guilty of 73 violations across multiple jurisdictions. The evidence is documented, corroborated, and undeniable. Body cam footage, citation records, third-party testimony, victim impact statement, multiple officers, court clerks, independent witnesses, and the impact is real. Mrs. Chen's delayed treatment, families who circled parking lots, emergency vehicles that were blocked. He picked up his pen, started writing. $6,380, $5 in original fines, $3,200 in late fees, $2,500 in court costs. Total, $12,085. Victoria's face went pale. Her attorney started to stand. Judge Caprio held up his hand. But I'm going to stay $6,000 of that amount. On one condition. You complete the following requirements within 90 days. All of them. No exceptions. He handed a paper to the bailiff, who walked it over to Victoria. She looked at it. 7 requirements, handwritten. Number 1. Judge Caprio read. Written apology to Mrs. Chen. Handwritten, authentic, specific. I will personally review it. If your attorney wrote it, I'll know. Try again. Number 2. 120 hours at Rhode Island Hospital valet service. You will park cars, you will help patients, you will learn what access means. Number 3. You will fund and appear in a public service announcement about handicapped parking abuse. Your face, your voice, your name. It will air on local television and be distributed to every high school in Rhode Island. Number 4. Disability awareness training, ADA compliance workshop. You will pass both. Number 5. 2,000-word written reflection on how privilege blinded you and what accountability feels like. No fluff, no corporate speak. Truth. Number 6. If Mrs. Chen agrees, you will meet with her in person. You will listen. She will speak. You will not justify, explain, or minimize. You will hear her. Number 7. 80 additional hours of community service with disability advocacy nonprofits. Judge Caprio looked up from the paper, looked directly at Victoria. Mercy is not a coupon, Miss Ashford. It's a contract with your future. You break it, you pay the full $12,085 plus contempt charges. Do you understand? Victoria nodded, whispered, Yes, Your Honor. But Judge Caprio wasn't done. Because this wasn't just about Victoria. This was about a system that had failed everyone. I'm also issuing the following recommendations to be implemented across Rhode Island municipal courts. Number 1. All traffic citation dismissals will be logged publicly. Names, reasons, approval chain, transparent. Number 2. No dismissals for influential phone calls. Every waiver requires written judicial review on the record. Number 3. Unpaid citations over $500 trigger automatic license suspension. No exceptions. Number 4. Citizens can report pattern violators through a hotline, investigated within 10 business days. Number 5. Every high school in this state will receive a presentation on entitlement versus accountability, using this case as the primary example. He looked at the gallery, at the cameras in the back of the courtroom. If you believe accountability should apply equally, regardless of wealth or influence, then make sure your city council knows about these recommendations. Because what happened here shouldn't have taken 3 years and 73 violations to address. And then the courtroom doors opened. A man walked in. Expensive suit. $5,000. Easy. 2 attorneys behind him. Everyone recognized him. Richard Ashford, Victoria's father. Billionaire real estate developer. The man whose name she dropped to Officer Rodriguez. He walked straight to the bench, confident, used to getting his way. Judge Caprio, I'd like to discuss this privately. I'm sure we can. Judge Caprio didn't let him finish. Mr. Ashford, quiet resolutions are how patterns continue. Your daughter will complete this program or face the full penalty. That decision is hers, not yours. Richard Ashford started to argue, started to say something about donations, about influence, about conversations he could have. And then Victoria did something no one expected. She put her hand on her father's arm. Dad, stop. 2 words. The first moment of growth. The first time she'd ever told him no. Richard Ashford looked at his daughter. Looked at Judge Caprio. And Judge Caprio spoke calmly, firmly. Mr. Ashford, you're welcome to stay and observe, but this is her case, not yours. And if you attempt to interfere with her completion of this program, I will hold you in contempt. Are we clear? Richard Ashford didn't answer, just turned and walked out. The 2 attorneys followed. And Victoria sat there, alone, holding a piece of paper with 7 requirements that would change her life. 90 days. That's what she had. 90 days to prove that accountability could coexist with second chances. Day 1. Victoria arrived at Rhode Island Hospital Valet Station, 7 a.m. The supervisor, a man named Marcus who'd worked there for 16 years, handed her a vest and a clipboard. You're parking cars. That's it. No shortcuts, no special treatment. You show up late, you start over. She parked 47 cars that day. Her legs ached, her feet blistered, and at 2:30 p.m. she saw a wheelchair van pull up. The driver waiting for her to move a car she'd parked too close to the accessible ramp. She'd blocked it, not intentionally, but she'd blocked it. And she saw the frustration on the driver's face. The same frustration Mrs. Chen must have felt. Day 8. She submitted her letter to Mrs. Chen. 3 pages, handwritten. She thought it was good, thought it was honest. Judge Caprio sent it back with 1 sentence written at the top. This reads like your attorney wrote it. Try again, in your own words. Day 12. Second letter. Submitted. Mrs. Chen's response came through the court 3 days later. I'll meet with her. Day 19. The meeting. A conference room at Rhode Island Hospital. Mrs. Chen sat across from Victoria, a nurse beside her, Judge Caprio observing via video call. Mrs. Chen spoke for 40 minutes. About her diagnosis, about her treatment, about circling that parking lot, about missing her appointment, about the 3 days that mattered. Victoria listened, didn't interrupt, didn't justify, didn't explain. And when Mrs. Chen finished, Victoria said 6 words. I'm sorry. I didn't see you. And Mrs. Chen responded, I know. That's the problem. Days 22 through 50. Valet work continued, every day, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. And things started to change. Week 4. A man in a wheelchair waited 20 minutes because someone, not Victoria, had parked in an accessible spot. Victoria helped him file a report, stayed with him until parking enforcement arrived. Week 6. A mother with a stroller and a toddler struggled with the hospital entrance door. Victoria held it. The woman looked surprised. Thank you. You're the first person who noticed. Day 55. PSA filming. Victoria sat in front of a camera. No script. Just her. I parked in handicapped spots 42 times because I thought my time mattered more than other people's needs. I was wrong. Access isn't a courtesy. It's a right. And I stole that right 42 times from people who needed it to survive. The PSA aired on 3 local stations, ran for 6 weeks. 17 high schools requested copies for their driver's education programs. Day 73. Disability awareness training. 4 hours of classroom instruction. Then, the practical exercise. Navigate the building in a wheelchair. Find the bathroom. Get a cup of coffee from the cafeteria. Return to the classroom. It took Victoria 40 minutes to find the bathroom. The accessible entrance was around back. The elevator was broken. She had to go to another building. And when she finally found it, the door was too heavy to open from the wheelchair. She sat in the hallway and cried. Day 88. Written reflection submitted. 2,043 words. Judge Caprio read every single one. One line stood out. I didn't understand that access isn't a favor. It's the floor. And I lowered the floor for people who were already struggling to stand. The first PSA script had been rejected. Too polished, too corporate, too scripted. The first letter had been rejected. Too vague, too defensive. Too much like an attorney had edited it. The first reflection had been rejected. Too surface level. Too focused on what she'd learned instead of what she'd done wrong. But this time, the words were hers. Raw, honest, uncomfortable, real. Day 90. Victoria returned to Providence Municipal Court. Alone. No attorney. No father. Just her. She'd completed all 7 requirements. 120 hours of valet service. The PSA. The training. The reflection. The meeting with Mrs. Chen. The community service with disability advocacy nonprofits. Judge Caprio reviewed the documentation. Watched the PSA recording. Read the reflection. Asked Marcus, the valet supervisor, to speak. Marcus confirmed every hour. Confirmed the growth. First week, she showed up because she had to. Last week, she showed up early to help train a new volunteer. Judge Caprio asked Victoria to summarize what she'd learned. No script, no notes. Just her own words. She spoke for 3 minutes. About seeing Mrs. Chen as a person, not an inconvenience. About understanding that privilege had blinded her to other people's struggles. About learning that rules exist to protect the vulnerable, not inconvenience the comfortable. About realizing that her father's money had purchased immunity, but it had also stolen her accountability. And that accountability, as uncomfortable as it was, had made her better. Judge Caprio listened, nodded. Miss Ashford, you stopped seeing parking spots as yours to take and started seeing them as someone else's lifeline. That's accountability. The stayed portion of your fine is forgiven. You owe $6,085, payable within 30 days. And if I ever see your name in my courtroom again for a violation like this, there will be no second program. Are we clear? Yes, Your Honor. Within 60 days of that ruling, Rhode Island implemented 3 major reforms. Public dismissal logs. Every traffic citation dismissal posted online with the reason and the approver's name. Pattern violator flagging. The system automatically flags anyone with 5 or more unpaid citations for judicial review. License suspension protocol. Unpaid fines over $500 trigger automatic suspension after 90 days. No mayoral phone calls, no attorney interventions. Automatic. The results were immediate. Dismissals dropped 67% in the first 6 months. 14 pattern violators were identified and prosecuted. Collections increased by $240,000 in the first year. But the impact went beyond Rhode Island. Boston reviewed their enforcement policies. Hartford implemented pattern flagging. New Haven adopted public dismissal logs. Springfield changed their suspension protocols. And Disability Rights Rhode Island referenced the case in 11 presentations to city councils across New England. The University of Rhode Island added a case study to their ethics course. When Privilege Meets Accountability, the Ashford case. Law students analyze the transformation model. Debate whether mercy should be contingent on growth. Discuss the role of judicial discretion in addressing systemic entitlement. Mrs. Chen is still stage 4. Her prognosis hasn't changed. The 3-day delay didn't cause her cancer, but it didn't help either. She keeps Victoria's letter in a drawer next to her bed. Keeps a screenshot of the PSA on her phone. Keeps a news article about the policy changes taped to her refrigerator. A reporter asked her what she wanted people to know. She said this: "I didn't want revenge, I wanted her to see me." And finally, someone made her look. 23 people contacted Rhode Island Hospital after the PSA aired. All with similar stories. All describing times they'd circled parking lots, missed appointments, struggled to access buildings because someone had taken a spot they didn't need. And local news ran a series on accessible parking abuse. Citations in handicapped zones increased enforcement by 40%. A father of an autistic son sent an email to Judge Caprio. "We watched the PSA together. My son asked, 'Why did she take those spots?' I finally had an answer. Because no one stopped her. Until Judge Caprio." That's what this case became. A reference point, a symbol, a catalyst. Judge Caprio keeps a copy of Mrs. Chen's letter on a bulletin board in his chambers, right next to a photo of his own mother in a wheelchair. And when people ask him why, he says this: "Because Victoria looked at that parking spot and saw convenience. Mrs. Chen looked at it and saw survival. Those are two very different things." Privilege doesn't just ignore need. It erases it from view entirely. He's given interviews about the case, about why he didn't just dismiss it like every other judge had, about why he created a transformation program instead of simply imposing a fine. And his answer is always the same. Every time someone dismissed Victoria's violations, they taught her that rules don't apply to her. And every working parent who paid their fine on time learned the opposite lesson. That's not privilege. That's sabotage. Rules exist to create fairness, not hierarchy. The moment we enforce them selectively, we're not bending them. We're breaking the system for everyone. And when asked why he didn't just punish her, why he gave her a second chance, he says this: "I didn't punish Victoria because she's wealthy. I held her accountable because no one else had." And that failure, that pattern of looking the other way, didn't just harm Mrs. Chen. It harmed Victoria too. It taught her she was above consequence. That's not privilege. That's sabotage. The normal response, one phone call, case dismissed, would have taught her nothing, and Mrs. Chen would still be invisible. Mrs. Chen couldn't call a mayor. She couldn't hire an attorney. She could only circle the parking lot and hope. And adding 15 minutes to a cancer patient's struggle because you needed coffee, that's not a traffic violation. That's cruelty dressed as convenience. The case has been cited in 4 state-level discussions about equity and enforcement. Used by disability advocates, traffic court reformers, ethics professors. It's become a training tool for parking enforcement officers, a case study for law students, a reference point for anyone arguing that accountability should apply equally. 7 New England cities have adopted elements of the Providence model. Public logs in 5 cities, pattern flagging in 4, license suspension protocols in 3. News articles credit Judge Caprio's approach in the Ashford case. And the person who made it all possible wasn't Judge Caprio. It was Mrs. Chen, who filed a victim impact statement instead of staying silent. Who could have accepted the inconvenience, rescheduled quietly, let it go. But who instead wrote 3 pages, named the harm, and asked the court to see her. Judge Caprio says it best. Mrs. Chen gave me the evidence. I gave it a consequence. But she's the one who refused to be invisible. That courtroom proved something that day. That wealth doesn't grant immunity. That access matters. That accountability can coexist with second chances. Victoria proved that even someone who had never heard no could learn to hear it and grow from it. And Judge Caprio proved that authority can choose fairness over convenience every single time. Because this wasn't about parking. It was about whose time we value, whose struggles we see, and whose convenience we prioritize. Rules exist to protect the vulnerable, not convenience the privileged. Compassion isn't ignoring harm. It's demanding growth from the person who caused it. And justice means holding people accountable while giving them the tools to become better. So what do you think? Should Victoria's transformation model be standard for first-time pattern offenders? Should public dismissal logs be mandatory in every city? If you've ever been affected by parking abuse, if you've ever circled a lot looking for an accessible spot that someone else had taken, If you've ever paid a fine you couldn't afford while watching someone else walk away without consequence, share your story in the comments. Subscribe to Judgment Stories for more cases where judges choose accountability over influence, where privilege is forced to confront consequence, where one person's courage exposes a system failure, and where justice doesn't ask who your father is, it asks what you did. This is a dramatized story for educational and storytelling purposes, not legal advice or reporting, but the principle is real. Accountability matters. Access matters. And sometimes it takes one judge, one victim, and one courtroom to prove it. Retry.